Hi guys, let me share something with you real quick. Here's the thing, Medicare is predatory, not the coverage itself, but the way that it's sold. Too many brokers pushing plans that serve them, not you. Too many mailers designed to confuse you. And for a lot of us, that's not surprising. We're used to systems that weren't built for us in mind. That's why I'm putting you on to Chapters. They're independent, the only Medicare providers that compare every plan nationwide. They are honest, they are salaried, they don't earn more based on what they recommend. They look at your doctors, your prescriptions, your whole situation, and they find what actually works for you. If you're already in the right plan, they say so straight up. Whether you're new to Medicare or if you've been on it for years, call Chapter 855-415-7389. It's free, 20 minutes, speak to a real person, know your worth. Testing, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do the circle. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Let me know if you can hear me. I see some many pregnant immigrant. Yes, honey. Polymarket put out that SCOTUS will be releasing its decision on birthright citizenship tomorrow. So the internet gonna be rocking, honey, and I'm going to pull the judge aside to do a 20-minute pre-recorded video. But let me get this. Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. We are early today. Some people like the evening shows because they're home from work. And some people you get to catch to watch it at 3. It's easier for me I prefer 3 in the afternoon because it's not about how many views I get during a live. It's really uploads for me, but I do want to get more people to watch. However, I just need to make a decision. So 3:00, 3:00, 3:00 will be the permanent time slot for Monday live shows. And excuse me. Wednesday, if I decide to do a show on Wednesday, if I have time, Wednesday, 3:00. Friday is always call in. So that's going to be 3 or in the evening, because it's Friday. But yeah, but Mondays, 3:00, 3:00, 3:00. Hi, guys. Ebony, Sister T, Sue, Calvin, Steven, Point Shoot. Please please share this video. And if you have not subscribed, please subscribe, honey. So another video went viral. The video where I put on the thumbnail the judge and Dr. Umar talking about Carmelo Anthony, honey. Y'all was in the comment section upset with me. Y'all are so phony. You guys are phony. You know why you phony? Because you get mad at the judge and you be trying to go at him in the comment section when he said, I hope they wreck him. So y'all was just dragging him, other content creators talking about him. And then last week video, when I put in the title, Judge Goes Off on Dr. Umar talking about Carmelo Anthony, if he had a gun or whatever, y'all upset with me as if talking about something, I'm cutting him off. Even though I didn't speak the whole video until the end, but y'all didn't like what I said. I'm bringing in race. I'm emotional. Y'all cannot make up your minds. Either you're going to be mad at me or you are not. But even if you mad and you commenting, you still a supporter because you still watching and you still commenting your feelings. Love you for it. But y'all need to really make up your minds. Either you hate me or you love me. There's no gray area. I don't like the gray area, honey. I really don't. But y'all be the main ones in y'all feelings. I tell people all the time, stick to the topic. Now, I was hiding people videos because you were not paying attention. You were not listening. I said, comment on the video. You could say you disagree with me, but if you make it too personal about me, I'm deleting or I'm hiding you, period, because it's not good for the video. No, stick to the topic. Honey, this judge better come on. Brazil won against Japan just now, 2-1. So they're going to the round of 16 and they will face the winners of Ivory Coast or the Netherlands that are playing tomorrow. So shout out to Brazil. The team that I want to go far in this FIFA, I wanted Iran to go far because I didn't. We're going to talk about that too, because that's why I brought it up. But I want the DR Congo, Senegal. Number one, of course, the United States of America. So I want the United States of America to win it. If they don't, I want either Senegal or the DR Congo to win FIFA. I'm tired of seeing Portugal, France, Germany. I do not want to see Argentina. I'm so tired of the Messi. I'm tired of watching him. Yeah. So, but it's always, it seemed like, especially in America, they love to implement politics and everything, even implementing politics into the FIFA World Cup. And it's like, damn, can we just have a sport or an event where everything is not political? Like when you have the Olympics, when you have FIFA World Cup, whether it's for the men and the women, this is a time for athletes throughout the world to showcase their talent, and a time for nations to actually come together and and be competitive, sportsmanlike, all that. But to make everything political and forcing athletes to talk about something political, I don't like that, especially in today's time. Like it doesn't help. It doesn't. It takes away. It just takes away. Actually, let me call the judge. See what is he doing, because he always coming up late. The purpose of me starting at 3, honey, is to be done by 5:30, no later than 6. So I could edit and upload stuff for tomorrow. I thought you was logging on. I had to walk out to the yard to get the signal and you just knocked me off. Sorry. All right, log on now. Bye. He always claim I knock him off. I don't think it's me. I don't think it's me. So what we going to talk about today, honey? Honey, we got to talk about SCOTUS. So today, June 29th, is really the last day for SCOTUS to issue their decisions before they go on recess and before the beginning of the October session, right? They need a summer break too. So they issued out a whole bunch of decisions today that we're going to talk about. And of course, the big one came last week when the Supreme Court sided with the Trump administration to give the Trump administration permission. Yeah, go ahead and you can deport the TPS, temporary protected status migrants, right? You could go ahead and deport them and tell them to leave. They have to leave. You have that authority. Operative word, temporarily, right? And then, of course, tomorrow's supposed to be the decision on birthright citizenship. So I just want to ask the question to the judge today: what will happen if SCOTUS sides with the Trump administration on birthright citizenship? What is going to happen next? They are the judge. Hey, how are you?
Alrighty. Let's see what's going on here. Here we go. Okay.
I thought it was today was their last day, because I have the I went on SCOTUS website, honey, and I was looking at the calendar.
They can do anything they want to with what they are with their business. They can reset it till tomorrow. 2 days from now, they can come back on Saturday if they
Oh, they
want
can.
to.
I didn't know. I thought they stick to their calendar.
They set the calendars. If they decided by the majority, or in certain cases the chief justice, they're going to do something, they do it. So they haven't issued everything, but they haven't released everything all ready for the day. About an hour and a half, going on 2 hours ago, they released one of the most important things that was on the calendar, and very few people are paying any attention to it. They declared an act of Congress in part unconstitutional and exceeding the congressional authority. on a 6-3 decision with Justice Roberts writing the opinion. So that's interesting.
Oh, one okay, so you know what? So yesterday when I checked the calendar, the 29th was decision day. The 30th wasn't highlighted, but it's highlighted today. So you're right. They made the decision like, no, we're gonna come back tomorrow and issue some more decisions.
And by the way, at one point in the Supreme Court's history, they did not issue written opinions. The justices read them from the bench. And what happened was there were enterprising people who could take shorthand notes who would copy down what they said and publish them later as evidence. And then in the 1840s, they started change, or 1830s, they started changing that.
Mhm.
And now they have the current system where they do release what they're going to do. One of the main things that might be of concern to this industry concerned the television coverage of all business of the Supreme Court, except when the majority of the justices decided that it wasn't in the interest of a specific situation to have it public. So, they show the image and then you can hear it. But now this is an act of Congress, and the question is do they have the authority to do that? And would the Supreme Court do anything about it? And 20 years ago, myself, Judge Napolitano, and Judge Mathis got invited to lecture that judicial conference that included the Supreme Court on cameras in the courtroom. Mathis said he had a gospel event to rehearse for, so he didn't show, much to the uh, aggravation of the justices. But Judge Napolitano and I lectured on cameras in the courtroom for 2.5 hours. But anyway, it's a consideration they've had, and that's that thing in there about open and public proceedings.
So let me read this real quick because what you just brought up, we're gonna get right into it. In Trump versus Slaughter, the court struck down the Federal Trade Commission's for cause removal protection for its commissioners, finding that the restriction violates separation of powers. The ruling weakens the traditional independence of the FTC by making its leaders more directly removable by the president, expanding presidential control over the agency. What does that mean, honey?
Well, what it says is Roberts put it very brilliantly. He said, while ordinarily the Senate has to approve a nomination, and hopefully they will get somebody that the president can work with, but you cannot impose someone on the president that he cannot work with because he's ultimately responsible for the product. So you can't make him work with somebody he can't work with. So he has the ultimate say on firing. So a question was a statute that says a person could only be removed from the position for an appropriate number of causes. And Trump said, we don't need it. This is executive authority because the Constitution makes the president responsible for these things. And that being the case, the parties just work for the president. I had been saying that before when I said, when you start talking about this, that, and the other person being terminated or not hired or a new attorney general coming in, ultimately, under the Constitution, for these things, the president is the person responsible. So these are only his assistants or secretaries. So you cannot impose on him someone he can't work with because that is an unconstitutional interference with the office of president. And that's what the court held on a 6-3 basis with the usual three lib holdouts. I don't know what a woman is and the other two that Obama appointed.
So it says that the Supreme Court gave President Donald Trump sweeping new authority over approximately 24 multi-member agencies that Congress intended to be independent. 6-3, the justices struck down a federal law that bars the president from firing members of the Federal Trade Commission, except in cases of insufficiencies, neglect of duty, or malfeasance.
Malfeasance. You
malfeasance.
do some wrong. In other words, something was unethical or questionable, or it gave the appearance of an impropriety.
The law, um, a majority of the justices ruled, violates the constitutional separation of powers between the three branches of government. And in reaching that decision, the court overruled its 91-year-old decision in Humphrey's Executor versus United States, which had upheld the law at the center of the dispute. Now, this is what Roberts, Chief Justice
Well, let
Roberts.
me give an explanation
Okay.
that's very important right here. As Roberts points out, 91 years ago, the FTC was not what it is now. So the evolving conditions of society, which is essentially the language from the very first case of the U.S. Supreme Court, the evolving conditions of society make the FTC something that it is now that it was not then. Then it did not have the ability to do quasi judicial orders, administer, hold hearings, and vest consequence for violation of its orders. So, since it does now, that's executive authority vested in the president, and he has to have absolute control over what's done in his name. In other words, if you are held accountable for it, you should be able to control it.
Now it says Chief Justice John Roberts contended that the president must have the assistance of officers he can trust, although it is up to the Senate to decide whether to confirm those with whom the president will prefer to work. Neither Congress nor the courts may saddle him with those with whom he cannot work.
That's the important thing. You can't put somebody on him he can't work with.
Subordinates who exercise the president's power or subject by removal by him, then and only then can they remain accountable to the president and the president to the people.
That got him in there. All right. So, in other words, this is Congress trying to usurp the separation of powers and take upon itself something that it did not have the constitutional authority to do. See, the president is not the chief executive order of a corporate officer of a corporation. The CEO of a corporation is modeled on the U.S. presidency, since our form of government came before the first corporations in America. And what that means is that the CEO, even though he's elected by a board of directors, and the chief executive for the country is elected by a board of electors, they are all responsible to the people of the country, and that is their choice for the top cop, top administrator, boss hog in charge of administering the laws. So Congress can't jump in there and control what he does in exercising that discretion past perhaps making certain things unlawful or controlling the purse.
Mhm. Now, also, what came out, where is it here? This The court prevents Trump from firing Fed governor. The Supreme Court on Monday ruled in favor of Lisa Cook, a member of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, whom President Donald Trump had attempted to fire by a vote of 5-4. The court held that Cook can continue to remain in her job while her challenge to Trump's efforts to fire her moves forward. Writing for the majority, Chief Justice John Roberts contended that if the Trump administration were correct, it would in fact transform the Federal Reserve for cause protection into a will employment, an interpretive leap out of step with the statute Congress enacted and our nation's tradition of central banking protected from political
Bank One, First Federal Bank, Second Federal Bank. There's a tradition. It goes back a couple of hundred years, but it got abandoned because everybody turned against the idea of a federal bank for a number of reasons, including some minor depressions that were caused. So the point that they raise in that case is that it's not really a thing that's exercising executive authority. So if it does start exercising, in fact, executive authority, then Trump would have the same authority over it that he had in the Slaughter case, which is the one we just got through talking about. So one of the things that's of issue there is whether or not the FTC, not FTC, the Fed
Hmm.
does in fact exercise that kind of control and authority. So what they simply did is, as an administrative thing, saying you can't kick her to the curb right now. It has to go to court first, because we right now, with what we have in front of us, we don't have any reason to change our previous rulings that it is not an administrative agency in terms of exercising executive function.
Okay.
That may change.
So I just want to read what Justice Clarence Thomas called the ruling incorrect. Although the court expresses concern that the president removed a board member for the first time in the Federal Reserve 111-year history, it expresses no such concern that it today upholds an injunction against the president's removal of an executive officer for the first time in the Constitution's 237-year history.
He's beginning to get better. I like some of the stuff he's written lately.
Okay.
Um, he's getting better. He's learning. I learned a lot, so I'll give it that. Now,
I want to swing real quick back to the FTC ruling because I read what Chief Justice John Roberts said. This is what Justice Sonia Sotomayor penned a 49-page dissent that was joined by justices, of course, the Three Stooges, Elena Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson. Today, she wrote, the
Stooges,
Stoogettes, yes.
with due respect.
Today, the court discards the democratic regime created by the Constitution in favor of one that distorts the structure of government to fit the majority's theory of unitary, total executive control. The result is a president who emerges with far greater power than ever before.
That's true, but I mean, yeah, that's the point. They've been trying to get around it. See, this all started when Roosevelt started bogarting the scene. Bogart was Humphrey Bogart. He'd walk in dramatically and take over. That's where they got the term, man. Don't come in here trying to bogart something. But anyway, uh, it started with Roosevelt, and not really. It continued with Roosevelt, but it started with Wilson, Woodrow Wilson, the first Democrat president since a long, long time ago, right before World War One, and he started doing some sweeping things. Like until that point, when this Democrat got in the White House, DC had not been officially segregated, but on his executive order, DC was officially segregated. Uh, Before that, the United States Navy was integrated, where U.S. Navy personnel, at least in the non commissioned officer ranks, included petty officers, chief petty officers, senior chief petty officers who were black, who were bunked with and messed with white sailors. But Woodrow Wilson issued an executive order abolishing that and segregating the U.S. Navy. The
Mhm.
Army was already subject with that, but he issued some restrictions upon blacks being officers, which impinged on an effort through the Buffalo Soldiers, the 24th, 25th Infantry, the 9th and 10th Cavalry, and I think it was the 52nd Artillery Unit,
Mhm.
to have black officers. So this thing of overreaching democratic power started with a racist who was a professor at the University of Virginia who was a staunch segregationist. And it went from there to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who basically ran roughshod over a lot of stuff to set up a rescue for an economy that was failing and a lot of people starving and out of work before we had Social Security and safety nets.
Mhm.
So that is a long-standing tradition. But the Fed goes back more than 100 years. And the interesting thing about the Fed is that it was created because the economy was getting too complex for your typical elected official to understand it. Now, granted, when somebody had been in Congress for 20, 26 years and had been head of a committee for 14, he got kind of on the job training with such stuff. But now, with term limits being proposed for a lot of things, you have congressmen and other elected officials who either right now or would just be finding out what their job description was by the time they turned out, and you would lose the expertise that is in place now from people who have occupied committee positions for decades and have developed expertise. There's a good and a bad to both of these positions. But anyway, that's what we have right now is the Fed is a creation of Congress based on its lack of knowledge of how the economy worked. So they set this up to do recommendations and do some administrative things like setting the general prime interest rates. In other words, when banks borrow from each other, what is expected to be the regulatory interest rate, stuff like that, uh, exchange ratios with international currencies and things like that. So um,
Well,
that's what the Fed does.
okay. Well, I want to bring this up as well, right here. So, cell phone location data and the Fourth Amendment in Chatry versus United States, the court ruled that police conduct a Fourth Amendment search that police conduct a Fourth Amendment search when they obtain a suspect's location data from Google because individuals have a reasonable expectation of privacy in their cell phone location information. This means assessing such data generally requires a warrant or compliance with Fourth Amendment standards, reinforcing privacy protections around digital location tracking. And it says SCOTUS just ruled in the Shattery versus US that your location data is private. The government can't treat it as fair game because a company holds it. But the Constitution binds the government, not the private vendor it hires to collect your data. Um,
That's
I,
always been the case.
mm-hmm.
See,
Yeah.
the feds can't do it. The states can't do it under the 14th Amendment, but individuals can do it. See, it's a sanction against the awesome power of the government, either federal or state, against one lone individual or a small set of individuals versus what individuals can do with each other. So the case comes from the privacy standards that start with a phone booth. In other words, you couldn't just come in and wiretap a phone booth. You needed a warrant to do it because when a person used a phone booth, they had an expectation of privacy. When you use a phone service, you have an expectation of privacy, even though you have an agency, to wit, the phone company, acting for you. So the Fourth Amendment applies to that. But the onus this time and pushing the position didn't so much come from the right like it used to 35, 40 years ago. It came
Mm-hmm.
from the left who was curious about wanting to know what your political or social position was on something. So we run into that right here. And when I tell you sometimes that Facebook or not Facebook, YouTube is getting over the line,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm talking about in terms of this stuff right here. They exercise the privilege, not the right, to get assigned frequencies that they can use when they broadcast over the airways. So that is electronic communication, and that brings the feds in because that impacts interstate commerce. So the things that they do become open to question when they become a utility. A utility is different from an ordinary business because it winds up dealing with a whole lot of people, and that's the only game in town.
Mhm.
So when you control what is effectively a monopoly or a monopoly of circumstance, then you get held because it impacts interstate commerce or interstate communications with all of the constitutional protections coming in. And that, by the way, is how they get the Civil Rights Act to apply to ordinary businesses, because even though the impact may be slight, if this business deals with being open to the public, it directly or indirectly impacts interstate commerce.
Right.
So all of the constitutional laws apply.
I read something many, many, many years ago, and I got to go back to reading. I remember that interstate commerce, i.e., affiliated with the Civil Rights Act. Yes. Now,
That's what I keep telling you about. YouTube is getting way over the line because they have to have an FTC license to operate. And remember, FTC is now under, along with FCC, under the exclusive control of President Trump. He may remember what happened to him on Twitter, now X, before he opened up his own service. And that may result in YouTube getting a big smackdown when it starts saying you can't say the R word, though it's on the front page of every newspaper in America that day. You
right.
see.
I wrote that down. We're going to revisit Interstate Commerce Civil Rights Act on Thursday. So I want to move on to this, honey. Honey, I already told the judge we're going to be breaking down the decisions that came out because he could make it plain for everybody. So the justices uphold state allowing for late arriving mail-in ballots. That was a shocker. And
It didn't. No, that isn't the total thing. It just said in California's case, you can't prohibit them because we don't have any evidence as to what happened. You're talking about a hypothetical. We can't deal with a hypothetical case. It has to go back down. Remember what we've been talking about with the Anthony trial, where you can't get into the facts on the appeal. The facts are set by the trier of fact, which is the jury. All they can talk about is the law. Well, here they don't have a finding by a lower court as to what the facts are actually in the case, so they can't rule on that right now.
well, they're calling Amy Barrett a turncoat. So it says just over 4 months before the 2026 midterm elections, the Supreme Court on Monday upheld a Mississippi law that allows mail-in ballots to be counted as long as they are postmarked by and received within 5 days of election day. By a vote of 5-4, the justices in Watson versus Republican National Committee rejected an argument made by the political parties and others challenging the law. That federal law requires mail-in ballots to be received by election day. Writing the majority, Justin Amy Coney Barrett concluded that the election day statutes require the electorate's choice to be made on election day. That occurs so long as election day is the deadline for individuals to vote, as it is in Mississippi. But the election day statutes do not set a deadline for ballot receipt. So they do not prevent Mississippi from counting ballots postmarked before election day yet received afterwards.
Okay, now you know what the basis for that is. Not one of them cited. It's some ancient stuff in the United States. It's called the Agency of the Mailbox. Forever and a day since this country has been in existence and it had a postal service. When you put it in the mailbox, that's when it is delivered. The agency of the mailbox. That was just because of the circumstances when you had horse and buggy, and the fastest you could travel was by one horse, and you replaced the horse at a relay station every so many miles, like the Pony Express, excuse me. So what happens is when you drop the letter in the mailbox or you take it to the post office, when it is stamped with a postmark by American law, 200 some years old, it has been delivered on the date that it is postmarked. All right. So that's what they didn't discuss, but that's the real deal behind that Mississippi law. Like service of process. Before we had all of the computers and stuff, if you had so many days to file a brief with, say, the state Supreme Court, you could do several things. One, you could go file it in time so it get there by snail mail. Or what you could do is you could run up to the nearest outlet for the state Supreme Court nearest you, which from Memphis is a place called Jackson, which is about 80 miles away from downtown Memphis. And if you got there before midnight, that would effectuate the service. Or if you got it to the post office and it was postmarked before midnight, it was accepted as served. So as long as the post office, the same thing would be down in Mississippi, as long as it's postmarked effective the date of the election before midnight that night, then it is counted. So that's probably what the basis for that was. But nobody wants to talk about it because a lot of people forgot it because for their entire lifetimes, they've had email and electronic communication and they've never had to rely upon the mail.
Well, here's the thing, though. You know why people are calling Justice Amy Barrett a turncoat is because people are pissed at what happened recently in the LA mayor race. How I'm sorry, they was cheating with the mail-in ballots because apparently what it came out, they said, well, this is normal for California to have mail-in ballots come in late, and they have up until 30 days to count all of the mail-in ballots sometime in July, and that's crazy. So does this ruling allow other cities and states to do the same thing that the LA mayor race, counted a balance the
They
election?
haven't been allowed to get away with it yet. The issue is just not right for adjudication. That's the term. In other words, we don't know the actual facts. We know what the newspapers say and the TV stations say, but we don't know what happens when somebody, I swear, or I affirm, and you testify under oath subject to criminal penalties of perjury for stating a mistruth that alters the outcome of the proceeding. So uh, everything depends on that, not electronic. So what is going on is some of these issues are not ripe to be decided on appeal. And other things, they sought an immediate injunction, in other words, stop it until the proceeding occurs. But in this case, what's going on is let the proceeding occur and then we'll look at it once we get all of the facts.
Okay, but it says here that it says Supreme Court on Monday upheld Mississippi law that allows mail-in ballots to be counted
Yeah,
as long as they are postmarked and
yeah,
received within 5 days of election day.
yeah.
So it's still a deadline with the mail-in ballot.
And
So
also, it matches the old thing, which is why I belabored that point. That used to come up so often in appellate cases. Did the postmark precede the cutoff for filing? And if it did, then it was okay. So that was what's unsaid. But it's been so long ago that a lot of people were not alive when this was going on and they're totally unaware of it. And they think in terms of everything's been emailed for the last 100 years.
but here's the thing. So then how does this apply to LA?
California.
Yes.
Well, the California thing is that they're also not just considering postmark, they're considering the date that the would-be voter claims he voted that's on it. And the other thing is there's another thing tied in there. California is against having official ID, but for certain things, including some eligibilities to vote, All they require is any kind of ID, which could literally include a gym membership as being a valid form of identification. But New York and New Jersey, screwed up the national system, which is why we have to get those IDs with the star in the upper corner to get on an airplane now, because they knowingly issued driver's licenses to known illegals because they said that made their roads safer.
Mm-hmm.
And they were trying to squeeze in a way to get folk counted so they wouldn't lose several congressional positions.
Right. Real quick though, 'cause I'm going to add into this conversation the 1992 election, right? The presidential election held November 3rd, 1992, saw Democrat Bill Clinton defeat incumbent Republican President George H.W. Bush in a three-way race that also featured independent businessman Ross Perot. Clinton, who was the governor of Arkansas, ran as a younger candidate of change in wake of a recession and voter frustration over the Bush broken no new taxes pledge and a sluggish economy. Foreign policy wins like the Gulf War mattered less to voters than domestic economic concerns, summed up by the famous internal Clinton slogan, "Is the economy stupid?" Texas billionaire Ross Perot campaigned heavily on the deficit and economy anxiety, winning about 19% of the popular vote, the strongest third party performance in about 80 years, though he received no electoral votes. Clinton won with 43% of the popular vote to Bush 37% and Perot 19%, but his electoral college margin was wide, 370 votes for Clinton, 168 for Bush. The election ended 12 years of Republican control of the White House and marked a generational and political shift, bringing Democrats back to the unified control of the presidency and Congress and highlighting rising populist discontent that would shape later U.S. politics.
Okay, now what that all means with the Electoral College, if I can give people a simple way to understanding,
Mhm.
it was early politics and diplomacy. The United States can also be said by the United Nations of North America. In other words, it's just like the Euro Union, it's sovereign entities, in this case, 13 sovereign countries decided to unify as a political entity as the United States or United Nations of America, and they operated under that theory. So what winds up happening is when you get the electoral college, what you see reflected is the reality of the US Civil War. You have certain states that may have a greater population than another, and they break it up so that if you looked at a Civil War map and you looked at the Electoral College votes that the Civil War could have brought to bear on a presidential election, which did happen in that first election where Lincoln got selected, you will see the outcome of the Civil War. In other words, that reflects a political reality of not only population, but also other things that have to do with the states. So when you look at these things, quit thinking of it the way we do now and think of it 180 years ago, where you had sovereign entities where people owed allegiance to the state, not to the United States of America. And what wound up happening is this was necessary to get the various states in allegiance with each other and cooperating with each other to act as a coherent nation. That's why we have the Electoral College, which is why we just don't have a popular vote. Because if we just had a popular vote, everybody might as well stay home, but California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, maybe Texas, and just to wait to see who they decided to pick for president. But that isn't how it works in the real world. And if we had another violent civil war, it wouldn't work either. And it would be reflected in the outcome of that combat. Now, we're not going to have one for a number of reasons, but we might have a whole lot of social disorder. But anyway, that's what you had when you got this situation. I was very concerned in 1992 with what was going on because my former law office represented the vice presidential aspirant to one of those slates. So, yeah, all right.
Well, here's the question too. I'm going to play this clip here and briefly speak to what Stephen A. Smith posed. This is a good question.
I'll confess something to y'all. Clinton was a lawyer in Arkansas, grew up poor, relatively broke. How the hell him and the Clinton Foundation is worth hundreds of millions of dollars beats me. Barack Obama was a community organizer who became the president of the United States, and last time I checked, that salary ain't over $450,000 if I remember correctly. I got to double check that. How the hell you depart from office you worth over $200 million? It's amazing to me how these politicians go into office and you're sworn to serve the American people. It's called service, but somehow, some way, they always depart exponentially richer than when they arrived.
That's a great point.
Well,
Now,
I make one disagreement. Barack Obama was already worth $200 million more than that when he got in office.
but
Since he
to
was,
but to
yeah,
your point,
but see, the,
that 200 was his trust. So aside from that, he accumulated another 200 million plus
no,
after
no, his
office.
trust was worth a lot more than 200
Well,
million.
yeah, no, I'm just saying
But
aside
I'm just
from the
saying he
trust.
used his position. But you see, one of the real problems is America has not been properly informed by its press. One of the things the press needs to cover is how, in reality, ethically, an elected official for the United States of America cannot start a skateboard company, but he can engage or she can engage in insider trading. That's ethically okay to engage in insider trading where you tell you and your friends what's going on because you got confidential information because you're charged with regulating some industry. So what you find out in confidential hearings, you can pass on to other people. There's no ethical sanction against you doing it. That's how Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters get filthy rich off of effectively insider trading. But the weird thing is what's visible is they couldn't start a skateboard company. They couldn't start a business making chess pieces, but they can insider trade on tens or hundreds of millions of dollars or get a commission for people who put in a trust fund for them what they gain from the information they receive. See, that's perfectly legal and it needs to be addressed by litigation, or not litigation, legislation. But nobody's going to do it because the likes of her, they get rich. Now, the most she ever drew as a salary and reported to IRS as a lawyer in Arkansas was right at 200,000 a year. And that had a great deal to do with the fact that her husband had been 5 times governor of Arkansas. And he came from a weird background. This is funny incident. We went to a judicial conference down in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and he grew up in a trailer home nearby. So myself and two good old boy judges from East Tennessee decided to go by and look at the trailer home. So when we got there, there was a three-way fist fight going on, not two against one, but one against one against one. And one of the judges turned around and said, "Jesus Christ. He grew up here. No goddamn wonder he's the governor. You got to be smart as hell to get out of a place like this. This is crazy." And see, he had been a Rhodes Scholar and gone to college on a fellowship in Oxford, England. Went to Yale Law School, which was the place they tried to get all of the future leadership in America to come to so they could know each other and know a diverse population of the country. Um, and that's where he met Hillary, who, by the way, was a Goldwater girl. She was famous for being one of the Goldwater cheerleaders when she was in high school, and Goldwater was the Republican that ran against Lyndon Baines Johnson and got kind of badly beat up in the 1964 election. So it's interesting. She was head of the Young Republicans at Wesley All Girls College. And I guess she liked what she got from future President Bill, and she swapped over from being a Republican to a Democrat. So, you know.
Well, I want to play this clip real quick of her real quick.
I'm going to say something positive about Trump. So hold on.
Okay. I've got a grip on my chair right now.
Trump's 20-point plan for Gaza is actually a pathway to security for Israel, reconstruction for Gaza, and the possibility of self-determination, however defined, for the Palestinians. There are a lot of people who reject it because Trump did it, but it's the only game in town. There's nothing else. I really believe if we took this 20-point plan, which starts with, the disarmament of Hamas, a huge, important step yet to be accomplished, but took all of the 20 points so that it wasn't just disarm Hamas and maybe do some reconstruction and, build some,
hotels,
resorts on the coast. But if you really took the whole approach that is embodied in that 20-point plan, and I know there are people who are working to try to move forward on that, there is a glimmer of a possible path forward.
That's one of the most impressive things I've seen or heard her say. But let me say this. When I was an adjunct law professor, I used to divide the class up into teams. And I would assign the plaintiff side to one team and the defense side to the other. And then on the day of the exercise, I'd flip the script and make them switch sides, and they'd get upset. And I say, but you see, you're making a bad mistake. You want to be lawyers, so the first thing you have to do is learn objectivity, which means you understand both sides of the case. So you may have a client who is a plaintiff one week, and 2 weeks later on the same kind of case, you may get a client who is a defendant in another identical case. So you have to understand both sides. So if you're going to be a good judge, a good jurist, a good magistrate, a good arbitrator, a good justice on an appellate court, you have to be able to recognize the virtues and the flaws in each side. So what's going on is too much of today is vested in belief and emotionalism rather than objective analysis, exerted in a detached step back. What am I really looking at? It's like you're a military commander. Your objective is to take this over here, take this city or this town or control this valley. And if all you operate on is what you would like to be the case, you'll get your ass whipped, handed to you, and a whole lot of your troops slaughtered. So you have to be able to back off and objectively analyze what you're looking at. That is not done today in the press, and I'll give her kudos for speaking in a lawyer-like fashion here and being able to talk about the other side.
Okay. Well, I want to go into the TPS, right? Because, last week, and I already said this in the beginning of the show, I don't know if you heard me, but tomorrow, so Polymarket said that they believe that SCOTUS is going to issue the decision on birthright citizenship, right? Tomorrow. And so I said, I don't care what you're doing. I'm going to pull you aside to do at least a 20-minute recording on that breaking news. However, last week, Thursday, I believe, the Supreme Court, last week, Thursday, the Supreme Court cleared the way for the federal government to remove protections for citizens of Haiti and Syria under a federal program that allows foreign citizens to stay in the United States when the U.S. government believes that it is not safe for them to return to their homes. So, by a vote of 6-3, Mullen versus Doe, the justices paused rulings by federal courts in DC and New York that had barred the Trump administration from ending the designations under the program known as TPS, temporary protected status for Haiti and Syria. Instead, the court ruled that the federal law creating TPS program generally bars courts from reviewing the determinations by then Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem to end TPS designations for Haiti and Syria. The court also ruled that the Haitian TPS holders are likely to lose on the claim that Noem ended TPS status for Haiti because the country's citizens are overwhelmingly Black and therefore violated the Constitution's guarantee of equal treatment. I wanted
Well, okay. See, look at the area. It's the Caribbean, all right?
to.
They're French Caribbeans, but then look at the treatment that is given to the Bahamas. Now, in the Bahamas, the U.S. has naval bases. In the Bahamas, when you return from the Bahamas, you don't go through American customs when you get back to the United States. There is an American customs facility staffed by Bahamians inside the Bahamas. So before you get on the airplane, you go through U.S. customs in the Bahamas because the relationship is that close. Then you get on the airplane, and when you get back to the States, you don't have to go through customs. You've already been. Now, Jamaica is another kind of thing, but when you get to Haiti, there are all kinds of problems. And one of the things that is very seldom discussed is the fact that when we had that HIV/AIDS epidemic, a lot of the people that transferred the infection to the United States came to Haiti. That had to do with
Sure.
Baby Doc and his offering up Haiti as a haven for that trade that originated in San Francisco, where with youth, rampant pedophilia, kidnapping, sex slavery, and that kind of thing, there was a huge hotbed of HIV infection, and there was a transference going from San Francisco to Haiti. There were regular tours that were advertised in San Francisco as get your freak on, so to speak, go visit Haiti. And some other deplorable things that came from the fact that, thanks to Woodrow Wilson, thinking of it as a bad example for the American Negro to see, in that Haiti had gotten free on its own devices through General Toussaint Louverture, that they sent the Marines in there in late 1919, 20, 21, 22, 23, and they carefully selected them from Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, North Carolina, and places from the old Confederacy. So these folk knew how to handle their Negroes, and they put them in there to repress this, what Woodrow Wilson felt was a bad example for the American Negro to be exposed to. So they set up a tyranny. Papa Doc Duvalier got in power doing voodoo and practicing medicine, became a political force. His sick, weirdo freak son got in and did even more damage. And he set up a trade between the U.S. and San Francisco, New York, and other places, encouraging the trafficking in that nascent rainbow population to have fun. And that is a conduit for AIDS coming back to the United States when they had that outbreak in the late 80s and early 1990s, before they even came up with anything to treat it. So that is also in the background. And that means that Haiti has been up and down and with what's going on. And then there's Barbecue, who is slaughtering people left and right over there. Then
But
there's the thing that the Clintons.
I thought barbecue was actually helping the people. He was slaughtering like government officials or
Well,
something.
some, but it depends on what you call helping, which is a good dose of let me get something in my Swiss bank accounts so I'll be well off. And there's a lot of corruption. And then there was the thing,
So it's the
my
question
lady,
of who's funding barbecue.
yeah. And then there's another thing. When they had that earthquake, a lot of people
Are you serious? Oh my God. Somebody right in the middle and somebody's calling like, come on, stop with the phone calls. Give it a second. Somebody called him and knocked him off, so the judge would be hopping back in. The conversation was getting good. Guys, please hit that like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Please share this video. Shout out to everybody that's watching on X. Um, Appreciate you guys being here on a Monday afternoon. Oh my God. It never fails. It never I'm not cursing today. I'm not cursing. I'm not calling anybody any names, even though I have a sneaky suspicion who was actually calling you. But go ahead. Okay. It's right.
nobody called me.
Oh, it
It
did just
just it just went up and a yellow thing says connectivity, and then it flashed
uh,
back. Nobody called me.
all right. Well, continue what you were saying. You said
In other words, I actually participated with, if anybody wants to look him up, the late Dr. Clifford Stewart of Los Angeles, who we called each other brothers because we looked alike. He was just me on steroids and a Grand Marshal Archmaster. Uh, we had to go send down a rescue team to save a beautiful sister that was a family friend who was doing a documentary on some Catholic nuns in a convent who were taking the orphaned girls whose families had died during the earthquake, and they were selling them into sex slavery to raise money for Jesus. So she was exposing that and stepping on a lot of toes. And we had to go down and, well, it got interesting. Maybe one day I'll write a book about it. It might make a good movie.
write
So
a book, honey. We about to do a whole different video on it. But let's swing it back to the
So
TPS.
anyway, I'm just saying that's what's going on with why Haiti has been in a question
Well,
because
wait. Let me throw this in here because Haiti, yes, Haiti they need to take accountability for a lot of stuff that has been going on with their country for decades and centuries. However, the United States, particularly Hillary Clinton and her foundation, has went into Haiti and kept it impoverished as well.
yes, that's it. But there's some secrets down there that some people don't want to get out of Haiti. And there are also some very bad things that a free exchange between Haiti and the United States might increase. One of them that I talked about was what happened in the late 80s and in the early 90s about the transference of the HIV/AIDS epidemic from that epicenter to the United States. So there are some other bad things there that they don't want in. And, I haven't kept up with it as much as I might have, but that's got a lot to do with why it's not on a favored status. Now, in the Caribbean, you can go to Barbados, you can go to Jamaica, you can go to the Bahamas, you can go to Puerto Rico, you can go to Bermuda,
Mhm.
Aruba, and you will find Haitian colonies where they're illegals. But the interesting thing is, they seem to have a vigorous work ethic. So when anybody has onerous, heavy lifting work, they hire the Haitians illegally. So it's a problem in the whole Mediterranean. And that's got to do with what Woodrow Wilson, a Democratic president, set up early on 100 years ago. So we might have some responsibility to correct what we did, but right now I think there are a number of reasons why people don't want a free exchange with Haiti because there are people who don't like us for a number of reasons who can sneak in. The same thing with the problem with Assyria in the Middle East with the other part of this particular edict, where we can boot them back, even if they've been here. That is the problem.
So I want to play this clip here because this is Secretary Mark Wayne. He's the secretary for DHS, and he was taking a couple questions, particularly on this, how safe is Haiti? Is it safe for the people to go back to Haiti? So I want to play this clip. It's 8 minutes. So I guess I'll play half of it, for time's sake or whatever.
So more than 350,000 people from Haiti and Syria who have lived and worked legally in this country under TPS. Will you be deporting all of them? Will they be all deported back to their home countries, Haiti and Syria? And when will these deportations start? Will it be immediately?
Well, Jake, first of all, temporary protective status was never intended to be permanent. And there's a lot of people that came over here 15, 20 years ago underneath TPS that's already changed their status. The whole time these individuals have been here underneath the temporary protective status, they could have applied for a visa. They could have applied for LPR. They could have applied for different directions, but the status itself can be ended in its name itself by saying temporary. So these individuals have a couple of choices. They can try to apply for a permanent residence here. They can apply for a temporary visa if they choose to, or they can choose to go back. And if they want to go back, we'll help them with that. If I'm talking directly to the individuals with the temporary protective status, either try to fill out the paperwork and be here underneath a permanent status, or we'll help you get back to your country. We'll actually give you a plane ticket plus roughly $2,100 to help you reestablish when you get there. But temporary protective status, according to the courts and in its name itself, is not permanent status.
So if the 350,000 temporary protective status holders right now start applying for permanent status, start applying for visas, will they not be deported? Is that a way for them to stay in the U.S. legally?
Well,
You've built your wealth. Now you're ready for a financial advisor that understands your vision. You're ready to set your legacy in motion. You're ready for Mariner. Take your next step at mariner.com. You've built
They got
your
all
wealth.
these long
Now
ass
you're ready
commercials
for a
that you can't
financial
even skip
advisor
anymore.
that understands your vision.
I know.
You're ready to set your legacy in
And
motion.
corporations.
You're ready for Mariner.
You know,
Take your
Pianki,
next step at mariner.com.
Yeah, 1 second.
you know,
it depends on if they
don't you?
qualify or not.
Oh, well,
Underneath some visas, when you overstay your visa, when you have to go back to the country you came from. Underneath TPS, while it is still in order, you're able to apply for different status. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to be accepted. There's a lot of things that take into consideration. First of all, have you been here and been charged with a felony, or do you have a criminal background? Do you have pending charges against you? Those won't be accepted. If you've been here and you've been living off the taxpayer dollars, meaning that you're part of social programs, those won't be accepted either. If you've been here and you've had a full-time paying job, underneath some circumstances, those would apply, but you have to go through the regular steps that every other immigrant that wants to come to the country legally has to go through. So I can't say that everybody's going to be accepted, but you are eligible to apply. Nothing prevents you from applying, filling out the application, but nothing's prevented them since they've been here underneath TPS either.
So obviously you're correct that the T in TPS stands for temporary. The Trump administration's argument
That's right.
Is that this was only supposed to last 18 months. My understanding of how the process works is the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security has the discretion to extend it if the U.S. State Department says that the countries that these people are from are still considered unsafe, which is why they were afforded TPS status to begin with. Is it the position of the Trump administration that Haiti is a safe country to send these people to?
Well, we take a lot of things into consideration. Secretary Rubio, the president, and I have had multiple conversations about this. Obviously, the qualification isn't quite just that simple. And keep in mind, a lot of these individuals haven't been here 18 months. They've been here 18 years. Some of them have been here 20 years, 30 years. They've had plenty of time to reestablish their status inside the United States. They just chose not to. Then there's some that has been here underneath the Biden administration that took advantage of an open border. And those individuals didn't really come over here because they needed protective status. They came over here because they were taking advantage of a weak leadership. So what we want, and the president has made this very clear, those that are coming to this country legally, they need to be able to contribute to the United States, not be a burden on the taxpayers. And so we are continuing looking at our temporary protective status. Those individuals that do need assistance because of the country they're in, we're always looking at them. There isn't a more generous country in the world than the United States, but we don't want people to take advantage of it.
Right, but do you maintain that it is safe in Haiti to send these people back?
Well, I think, like I said, Jake, this is a decision that's being made from the State Department, from myself and the president, and there's a lot of things that we look at when we take this in consideration. It's not just one factor that plays into this.
The reason I ask is because I heard Stephen Miller, who's driving a lot of this, say that Haiti is safe for Haitians. And I just looked at the State Department's website, and they have a level 4 do not travel advisory for Haiti just from a few months ago, from April, and it says, quote, violent crime is rampant. The expansion of gang, organized crime, and terrorist activity has led to widespread violence. Crimes involving firearms are common. Crimes include robbery, carjacking, sexual assault, and kidnappings for ransom. That doesn't sound safe to me.
Can you stop a second? Can you stop a second? You hear how this sounds, right? I have a list of the 50 most dangerous cities in the whole world. There's not one Haitian city on that list that's considered as dangerous in those things he just recited as Memphis, Tennessee. So in other words, you are a U.S. citizen born in the United States, or lived here for 55 years. You live in a more dangerous city than anywhere in Haiti. So if they send you back to Haiti, you're going back to some place that is not as dangerous in terms of those categories that he just recited as several United States cities. St. Louis is one of them too that's more dangerous than any Haitian city. So in other words, there are cities in the continental United States that are more dangerous. So how can you say we can't send you back to your home country because we'd be sending you back to something that is less dangerous than in the United States? You see where that goes when you start making a consideration that way? Like, wait a minute, what the hell are you talking about?
And before I finish playing this clip, they don't, and if they don't want to go back to Haiti, there are other countries that they can't go to that is more open to them, Canada or Spain, or so you don't have to go to Haiti, but you just have to get up out of here.
And see, there's a two-edged sword. And you know what that is? We gave you a temporary status, but you've been here 27 years. So what have you done with it? We don't have to speculate. We can take a look at it. So did you start a business, work productively, set up a family, become a respectable resident of the United States? Or has your behind been on welfare the whole time? Have you been locked up in jail for a whole bunch of felonies? Well, we don't want you. Now we found out what you were all about, so get the hints, but you can stay. See, what they're talking about is you're getting, again, this press that is trying to propagandize a position. And what is really being said is, it depends. 2 words, it depends on what you have done in your temporary status. When somebody says you're on temporary status, that doesn't mean until the day you die of old age. All right?
So I want to finish playing this clip because I want you to hear the answer, you know, that Secretary, what's his name, Mark Wayne said, as far as, you know, they have a category 4 of no travel zone for Haiti.
Yeah.
Well, that do not travel is not for Haitians. That's do not travel for the United States, because they are kidnapping or trying to kidnap individuals from the United States because they feel like their family has the money to pay the ransom. We have do not travel in places in Mexico, or advisory warnings. In fact, if you go through our website in the State Department, you'll see there's advisories to a lot of places that are vacation destinations that we have advisories on, because of the real risk to Americans. That doesn't mean it's a risk to the individuals that live there. So that advisory is to American citizens traveling to Haiti, not Haitians going back home.
I understand that, but based on everything I've read, including the UN and Human Rights Watch, it doesn't sound safe for Haitians. More than 8,100 killings documented last year. Those weren't Americans. Haiti is among the top 5 countries with the highest rates of rape and sexual abuse, with more than 1,200 cases of sexual violence last year. That's not Americans. 1.4 million people have been displaced. Those aren't Americans.
Well, it sounds like Chicago, Memphis, and St. Louis and Detroit. You know, like, again, what are you saying? See, listen to him. He's being hypocritical. He's ignoring the circumstances in the United States as it applies to American citizens. That 8,100 homicides for the whole country, that's like the total of some of the largest cities: LA, New York, Chicago, throw in Dallas, Houston, Miami, Detroit, and then at the top of the list in absolute numbers, you've got Memphis, Tennessee. So, I mean, you can go places if you live in America and you were born here that are more dangerous than they would be for Haitians in Haiti. So, again, see, that's a specious statement. It's taking stuff out of context, which, back to the previous discussion about why the U.S. Supreme Court sends stuff back, is so they can get under oath, factual, statistical, actual numbers and reality, rather than going off of some BS like this.
Right.
Now, that said, it's an interesting tale.
Is there a question in that?
Well, I'm just
Jake,
saying,
I'm sorry.
let me ask you. You said you're going to give them a plane ticket if they want to get out and go back to Haiti. How logistically would it happen? Because the FAA prohibits commercial flights to Port-au-Prince because of the gunfire from terrorists and gangs. Civil aviation, by the way, is also prohibited in Syria.
So we have several options for deporting individuals, because we have deportation flights where we can get into areas where maybe commercial travel can't go to. So we'd simply book them on a flight. We expect to have pretty full flights going back to Haiti and going back to some of these countries where TPS has been eliminated. So we'll provide the travel for them, and like I said, we'll give them $2,100 roughly to go back home. We want the individuals to be repatriated to their country. Maybe they can go back there and help restore their country. Syria is a prime example. Syria has come a long ways in just a few years underneath their new leadership that we have. We truly expect that Syria can be a great country again, but it takes it takes the people of Syria to build their country back. The same thing in Haiti. It takes the people of Haiti to win their country back. If we really want those countries to succeed, then they need the best of the best to be back in their country living there, and we're going to assist them in that.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, because
You've been here and you studied the United States. Now take it back.
But here's the thing too, because now you have immigrants, particularly a lot of Haitians that are running around here saying, "Oh, we built America." No, y'all did not. No, you did not build America. And the thing is, if you built this country to if you claim that you built this country to make it so wonderful the way it is now, why can't you do the same for your own? So when you look at the history of Haiti, yes, they defeated the French in 1804 revolution, right? Which, by the way, gave us opportunity to expand the United States by the Louisiana Purchase. But in turn, they went and you made a deal with the devil by agreeing to France to pay them over $100 million in 1804, pay them back the economic power that they lost by enslaving you, which was the main reason of you revolting. And it never Haiti. And then, of course, on top of that, with corrupt government throughout the centuries up until present day, Haiti never recovered. But it's by their own fault.
Yeah, but you see, here's the thing. when you start dealing with something a century ago, what are you really talking about?
Okay.
Did you ever get into the Robin Hood legend?
No.
Okay, some Normans, you saw the Vikings, you were a fan,
Yes.
all right?
Yes.
Remember Rollo,
Yeah.
The Hrothgar's brother?
Yeah.
There really was a Rollo.
Ragnar brother. Yeah.
Ragnar Lothbrok, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, that means ragged, furry breeches or hairy breeches. So anyway, Ragnar's brother, Rollo, there really was a Rollo. He was a Viking who wound up convincing the French that if they gave him a province, he would protect them from his fellow Vikings. He became the Duke of Normandy, meaning the Norse territory, all right? And they elected their first king so that he could deal with Rollo. Now, Rollo's great grandson was William the Conqueror, who came over and conquered England in 1066. William the Conqueror. That is the ancestor, though remote, for the current king of England. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that person oppressed the Saxons, put them in a condition of virtual slavery to the Norman lords. So when you get Robin Hood, he has a loose friendship supposedly with King Richard, who is a Plantagenet king, who is the grandson of William the Conqueror. And he has a brother, King John, who is evil, corrupt King John. So Robin Hood is a Saxon who is fighting the Normans so that his Saxons are not enslaved. All right. Now, what
Yes,
happens?
indeed.
What happens is does anybody know about that now in England? Yeah,
Robin. Oh, okay.
but what difference does it make? You see what I'm saying? In other words, at this remove, it doesn't make a damn bit of difference in terms of what's happening on a day to day basis, which a typical subject of England, who may be somebody from Jamaica in the Commonwealth, Barbados, may be an Asian from Singapore or Hong Kong, may be white from Australia or New Zealand, or no telling what they are from Canada, or it may be somebody from South Africa. They're all part of the British Empire, the Commonwealth. So, do you think it makes any difference to them what happened when the Normans enslaved the Saxons 1,000 years ago? No, it doesn't make a damn bit of difference. It is just tradition. So the point comes in, how long in the past does it have to be because something becomes, before it becomes a historical footnote, and it's a reality in your day-to-day existence and how you interact with somebody? And there are those people now that everything starts off with, they enslaved us. Yeah, well, were you ever a slave, or do you know anybody who was? Oh, well, they make me a slave now. Really?
Well, I
You know.
understand your point, but I'm just saying a lot of times those policies or those events that happened once upon a time in history does still have some effect of what is going on today to a certain degree. But people don't pay attention to history, right? They just look at what is going on today. But I want to play this clip here. This is Mandani, because we're going to eventually get into the socialism talk briefly, talking about basically he promised to shield the Haitian and Syrian migrants in New York despite the Supreme Court ruling. Let's take a listen.
Judges came back and said that it would be cruel to end it, that they need these protections. One of the federal judges even accused Kristi Noem of being racist for wanting to overturn these protections. So,
and remind us what we're looking at here.
This was Del Rio, Texas, in September of 2021, when we had about 15 to 20,000 Haitians cross the border illegally and just set up camp under the international bridge there. I was there. It's probably, in the 4 years of border coverage, the craziest thing I ever saw.
Judge, can you hear me? I can't see you or hear you. Go out and come back in. If you can see me and hear me, go out and come back in. I guess he's having connection problems real quick. Hello? Yeah, okay, he went out. Let's see. Okay, there you go.
Okay. You
Yeah.
just dropped off it. It was another one of those connectivity problems, it seems.
Oh, okay. I'll replay this clip real quick. It's only a minute.
I could hear it.
All right, let me just.
Judges came back and said that it would be cruel to end it, that they need these protections. One of the federal judges even accused Kristi Noem of being racist for wanting to overturn these protections. So
remind us what we're looking at here.
This was Del Rio, Texas in September of 2021 when we had about 15 to 20,000 Haitians cross the border illegally and just set up camp under the international bridge there. I was there. It's probably in the 4 years of border coverage the craziest thing I ever saw. And again,
but you also pointed out to me that they might not have been allowed in under TPS or allowed to.
So the thing about this is most of these people weren't coming from Haiti. Like I've posted all these pictures all along the riverbank. There were discarded passports, IDs, paperwork. Most of them had been living in Chile, Peru, and like Brazil.
Haitian people after the earthquake.
Yes, they were not coming directly from Haiti, but they got rid of all these documents and like these work permits from Chile because they didn't want U.S. authorities to know they had resettled in another country before coming here because it would hurt their possible asylum case.
So again, I don't feel sorry because it's a lot of lying and scamming, and masking. Everybody's situation is different, but the majority is the same temporarily. And if you've been here for a decade before this Biden administration for the past 4 years, right, that allowed the open borders, if you was already temporary before then, why haven't you not applied for permanent residency, for citizenship? Because you have all these lawyers and all these Haitian organizations and different organizations coming out saying we're going to help them now. Well, why weren't you so-called helping them before? Because they were never supposed to stay here. So I don't feel sorry. I don't care if you've been here 20 years and you're still temporary. I don't care if you came under the Biden. Yeah, if you get caught up, you're going to have to go. And a lot of those people, like they said, they settled in South America. But if you had a choice to stay in Chile and come to United States when it was an open border, you're going to end up coming to you prefer the United States. So they rip up that they ever had residency in Chile or any South American company, or they work papers there to act like, oh, I just came straight from Haiti and I need to file for asylum. No, that's abuse of our system.
Have you ever watched the James Bond movie, read a James Bond book?
Yeah.
Okay. You ever heard of a thing called spy?
Yes.
Okay. If this was the international spy community, wouldn't they be jumping up from joy, having multiple orgasms off of the opportunity to sneak spies into the United States of America that the Biden administration offered them for 4 whole years?
I don't know.
Yeah, they would. They'd be nutting off in the shadow.
Where are we going with this? I don't get it.
In other words, what the 16,000-pound elephant is in the room is the spies and international intelligence operatives, fanatics, suicide bombers, and other freaks that have crossed the border unimpeded, unsearched, unchecked, by invitation, and who have been hidden away in sanctuary areas by American officials who've had between 160 and $300 million funneled to them through the state of Minnesota for child care fraud. And they are terrorist organizations operating out of Iran and other places. They're just having a freak day. And these folk that let them in are somehow or another trying to act like they aren't here and getting upset when somebody's saying, you do remember 911, don't you? That wasn't too nice. So what do you think is going to happen when somebody says, aha, here's your chance, go for it?
Right. Right. Well, so I'm going to be talking about this rise of socialism.
This
As
character,
yeah, but so apparently the Democrat Party, they are somewhat disorganized, or they're in shambles, because now you have a subsection of the up and coming Democrat socialists. That's a thing now, right? And
yeah,
Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, the old time Democrats, well, oligarchs of the Democrats, they're not down for that. But of course, AOC, she loves that. So I say that to say, because what is happening recently, you have a lot of newly elected Democratic socialists in the U.S. They are gaining momentum by winning Democratic primaries in deep blue urban districts, especially New York, while pushing the party further left on economic and foreign policy issues. So in New York City, June Democratic primaries, a slate of candidates backed by Mayor Zohar Mandandi, he identifies as a Democrat socialist, swept several congressional and local races, unseating multiple established aligned incumbents, which
in
includes
the primary.
in the primaries, which includes Brad Lander over incumbent Representative Dan Goldman in the 10th congressional district, and wins by Claire Valdez and Darrell Che Valerie.
You don't need to worry about the names, just a
Right.
host of
So,
socialists.
right, against longtime office holders in 7th and 13th district. So the newly elected socialists are running on platforms centered on taxing the wealthy to fund expanded social programs, strong pro-labor policies, and aggressive criticism of U.S. support of Israel action in Gaza, including calls to abolish ICE and tax the rich. The Democrat Socialists of America, DSA, is leveraging these wins to argue that Democratic Socialist candidates can now compete anywhere across the country for any position, and is actively planning how to extend this model beyond New York into states like Colorado and Wisconsin.
Okay, do you know what you're listening to? The Democratic Socialist of America. Have you heard of the Democratic Socialist of Germany?
Yes.
Their acronym is NAZI, Nazi. See, most people associate Nazi with right wingers. They're not. They were socialist, National Socialist of Germany. We've got the National Socialist of America, and the German translation of that would be Nazi. So you see, we have our own Nazi party, and they're trying to abolish free speech, get rid of the Second Amendment so everybody's disarmed, get off into the Fourth Amendment, a search and seizure, which is we just got a decision, fortunately, by the Supreme Court that reinforced the Fourth Amendment rather than weakened it. Get rid of the Fifth Amendment so you have no right to be silent. So, Kamala Harris said the Fifth Amendment, the Fourth, needed to be revisited. And you've got some people that are trying to dismantle the constitutional protections that have been developed through the Bill of Rights with lawfare. And these clowns actually start talking about they're trying to protect us from what they're doing by flipping the script and then making an accusation. Now, see, this clown right here, you know what he's likely to provoke?
What?
Considering how we have electronic communications now, what's to prevent Wall Street from just saying, screw you, we're leaving. We're going someplace more friendly. Let's go to Miami. It's better down there, more fun, no harsh winters. Let's take all of the filthy rich that they're trying to punitively tax and saying, we put in the 60-hour weeks, we put it together, we got it together, other folk can't do this, and we hire lots of people. Let's move someplace else. See, that happens all the time. So when you move out, what do you have is an overpopulated place, too dependent on handouts, and nobody to get the money for the handouts from. So you just have a real live mess. And that's what he's likely to produce.
So I want to play this clip here.
What is the Democratic Party if not its voters? And what we saw yesterday evening were Democrats across the city turning out and voting for a new kind of politics.
A slate of 3 candidates endorsed by Zoran Mamdani won their Democratic primaries in deep blue House districts. In the 7th district, Democratic socialist Claire Valdez won the open seat over a pretty progressive opponent endorsed by the retiring Democratic member of Congress. In the 10th district, progressive city comptroller Brad Lander defeated incumbent Dan Goldman in a race that was largely about Israel. Both men are Jewish. Lander ran as a self-proclaimed liberal Zionist, but hit Goldman on voting against legislation to block military aid to Israel and taking money from pro-Israel lobbying groups. And then the biggest upset of the night, 4-term Representative Adriano Espaillat, head of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the first undocumented immigrant to serve in Congress, lost his Harlem Bronx district in an upset to a leftist community organizer named Daria Liza Avila Chevalier, a Democratic socialist who also believes in abolishing prisons, police, and all deportations. She might be the most left-wing candidate to ever win a Democratic primary in our lifetime. There's been a lot of focus on her old tweets, which she has deleted and mostly apologized for. I'm fine with that. My general position is to give people a chance who want to take back something they said or posted. Certainly would love to take back things that I've posted. Here's where I have a problem. She has not apologized for attending an anti-Israel rally on October 8th, 2023, a rally that was condemned by Zoran Mamdani, AOC, and Brad Lander. The other problem I have, she sat for an interview with the New York editorial board last week where she said she's against all deportations. She's for open borders because, quote, bordering is a very modern construct, actually. She wants to abolish prisons and refused to say, when asked, she got 4 different chances on this, refused to say that a convicted murderer should be sentenced to any jail time at all. Maybe she turns over a new leaf in Congress and like her voting record doesn't match some of these more extreme positions. I hope so. But I think the reason I bring this up is because when Democrats get questions about this, I think the answer is easy and important to give, which is that she currently holds a range of views that go from moronic to abhorrent. And not only those views not align with most Democrats in the country, nearly all Democrats in the country, actually most elected Democratic socialists, but like, I don't even think they align with like a lot of the people who probably voted for her. So like, I think people should you just got to say that.
And by the way, it might be a protest that they dealt with as individual constituents against the system, but see, again, the National Socialist Party here of America is paralleling the National Socialist Party of Germany, and we don't want that because, remember, they engaged in concerted lawfare. That's the 34 so-called convictions against Trump that, as a lawyer, jurist, somebody that devoted a half century to the practice and application of law, now retired, I find absolutely abhorrent that somebody has gone the way they've gone with lawfare.
Yeah.
And for them to sit there and start trying to accuse anybody else of what they've been up to is absolutely absurd. It's like even back in the 60s, you never had members of Congress standing up and giving speeches of encouragement to public disorder. You didn't have that. And when the public disorder was apparent, what they were protesting was abhorrent to the American system. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, and then you've got official laws that the Democrats were responsible for, holding that separate but equal is okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't even have that justification. You've got people who are saying it's all right to murder, it's all right to steal, it's all right to kidnap, it's all right to rape, it's all right to do this, it's all right to do that. And nobody should be punished because everybody's a victim, and we are against personal accountability. We are against logical, reasonable, rational, analytical, and objective thought. We're all for emotionalism. We are for emasculation. We are for neutering children like they're pet dogs or something, or cats. We are for the abdication of accountability, responsibility. We don't want public order. We want.
But you know why they say all that? They say all that to get people to support them and vote for them. And then, yeah, they're going to give them all these social programs, but they're going to control every aspect of your life because they have an agenda too.
Yeah, I know that. But just think about it. You live in Memphis, or you live in St. Louis, or you live in Detroit, and you have to go to the grocery store. You get in your car and say, I'm on E. I really need to go to the gas station. And you drive into the gas station and you see a bunch of thugs hanging around, and to you, they look suspicious. And if you say, oh, it's just my imagination, you get out of the car and start getting insulted, and they start approaching you. I don't think you appreciate the posture that the Democrats have been taking on law and order at that point. You look, yeah. You see what I'm saying? In other words, you're forgetting the ordinary person. What do they have to deal with on a daily basis? This is the same thing the Nazis did, where they just took what ordinary people had to deal with and they disconnected it from some perverted idea of what they were going to do. In other words, whereas the Nazis were anti-Jewish, you get these American Nazis, they're anti-masculinity, which is kind of crazy because they just effectively outlawed 50% of the human race. So that is even more preposterous than what the German Nazis did. The American Nazis are trying to outlaw half of humanity.
So, and this is what I'm saying, like the Democrat Party is kind of like breaking off. I'm gonna play this clip. This is less than a minute. This is Hakeem Jeffrey speaking to this rise of Democrat socialism.
You had a chance to speak with the New York City Mayor Mamdani on Wednesday, is that right?
Yeah, Mayor Mamdani and I had a very good conversation. It was forward-looking, it was authentic, it was candid, and I think we both have taken the position that there are going to be times where we may, as a congressional delegation, agree to strongly disagree with each other on endorsements, but at the same period of time, at all times, be committed to actually making life better and more affordable for the people in New York City and beyond. And in this moment of great extremism...
Excuse me, how the hell are they going to do that? They don't have an economic policy. That's complete bullshit.
Well, here's the thing. Mamdani, they and the city council, they were able to pass a rent freeze for 2 years in New York
Okay,
City.
so why in the hell are you going to be stupid enough to be a landlord and you going bankrupt by going along with that crap? You sell out or get out.
Well, there are homeowners who are pushing back against that because some people are saying, okay, you put a rent freeze on the tenants, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But on the other side of that coin, the mortgage rates are still going up for the owners. So are the taxes,
the interest rates, and the cost of living and everything else.
Maintenance and everything. So what they said that, so you do have a lot of slumlords, but what you're going to see is an increase in landlords not doing the repairs because they're going to say, well, I can't afford it. I didn't increase your rent, yada, yada, yada. So it's like
well, you know what the response is, don't you? You let the rental structure deteriorate. You keep collecting the rent, and then you just don't pay any damn thing on it. And you let them take it for taxes and see what the hell they get. They can't sell it because nobody wants to buy the deteriorated property and nobody wants to get locked into that mess. They had that same problem in Los Angeles, which over a 25-year period that it's been going on has produced this huge homeless population and a downtown deterioration, which winds up with the properties getting acquired by people who don't rent it anymore. They do something else with it and totally defeated their purposes. So what you wind up is you promote rackets.
Right. So let me play this here.
Socialism is spreading on the left after a trio of Mamdani-backed Democratic socialists swept their elections this week. New York voters now want socialism to spread nationwide.
I think socialism is a very important part of American culture. I feel like we all could use a form of socialism in our lives.
So you would want to be ruled by a socialist government?
I would see how it goes, you know, give it a try. Why not?
A more socialist system.
Wait a minute, wait. What are you noticing about these?
Wait, let me just finish playing it.
Right in her and the last two.
Let me just finish playing it.
America should disband the federal government and then open borders like the European Union.
We mostly just want to protest like corporations. Are these items for sale? I don't think that is free.
In a perfect world, it's like free everything. I don't want to have to like break my leg and then also be the person that pays for it. Jeff Bezos should pay for it.
2028 Democratic nominee for president. Would you want it to be a Democratic socialist? Yeah, it wouldn't bother me.
Personally, yeah, I'm very open to it.
This is called an EBT card. Your check gets divvied up and it goes into my EBT card. So for this reason, I get around $200 a month to spend on whatever I want to spend on.
You said whatever you want to spend it on. Isn't it just for food?
Well, I also get cash.
With that, can you go and buy, let's say, alcohol?
Yeah, I get alcohol all the time.
What about like marijuana?
Yeah, definitely. I need that.
So with your EBT taxpayer money, you buy marijuana?
You know, this is socialism.
For the people that work, like yourself, are basically paying for him to get high.
Yeah. And it's crazy because when it comes to food stamps, they say that you have to work to get food stamps.
What would you say to somebody who works and their money's being taken for you to buy marijuana, and they say that's not fair? What would you say to that?
I would tell them that they need to do research and understand what socialism is.
Got to get some of those EBT cards, right? Anything you want.
Yeah, that is insane.
Are these items for...
You know what? The Republican Party, the RNC, needs to get these and play that over and over and over and make that guy a superstar so he's as big as any actor in Hollywood, and make sure everybody in the United States of America hears that ignorant shit.
It's very much so ignorant. So,
like, what? Wait. Can I be crude? Somebody at the Happy Mexican told me this. He said, look, man, I work hard to pay for the pussy that I get. So the fact that somebody on my dime is laying around getting all the pussy he wants paid for, I resent the hell out of that.
So let me play this clip.
I mean, think about it.
No, it makes sense. Let me play this clip here.
Don't play that, but
our political system is ill, and both parties are just unwell. I mean, first of all, our political system is ill, and both parties are just unwell. Certainly, Democrats got shellacked in 2024. I was in a swing state. I won that same year, and to me, it was very simple. The Democrats had a million priorities. They tried to make everybody happy. They tried to answer every single question. And when you prioritize nothing, no one knows what you stand for. Donald Trump came in and he said, I got one thing I'm going to do. I'm going to make your life more affordable. I'm going to put more money in your pocket. And he won because he kept it simple and he focused on the primary issue that the American public actually wants answers on. Democrats got shellacked, and we haven't fully gotten back on our feet since then.
Do you think that is really the only reason?
A debate going on in the Democratic Party. And for me, this is why I'm a big believer in just new leadership, significant change. The old models do not work for people, and that includes in the Democratic Party.
When you say new leadership,
yeah,
what do you mean by that? You're not just talking about Trump being out of office. You're talking about new leadership within the Democratic Party as well, are you not?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think since Biden was in. Like, we need new leadership in the White House, the House, and the Senate, and on both sides of the aisle. That includes Democrats. Okay. And I think we have literally found ourselves in a situation where we just don't have people who understand the moment and understand what leadership means. That you chart a course and you explain to people, how are we going to get from this dark moment to a better place, instead of just circular firing squad,
Right.
you know, dem on dem violence. No one is talking about what they want to do. And that to me is a fundamental of leadership.
Now, Senator Slotkin, you do know, I want to make sure that I give you cover here. Let everybody know. Let me make sure you're clear. When you talk about new leadership, well, Hakeem Jeffries is the Democratic leader in the House, and Chuck Schumer is the Democratic leader in the Senate. When you talk about new leadership, that would mean they're out in favor of somebody else. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, if people can't understand that the game has changed, I mean, you're the sports guy. If people can't understand that the game has fundamentally changed and they can't adapt, then they need to let others lead.
Okay, you know what's going on here? Before, if a doctor told you you're suffering from constipation, you need a laxative or an enema. Otherwise, you're not going to be feeling too good. The patient understood that. Today, if a patient got told they were constipated and needed a laxative or an enema, they would be getting told by the Democratic Party that if they took a laxative, they'd die, and if they took an enema, they'd bust wide open, and that everybody was conspiring against them to put them in a position where somebody could get them to listen to common sense. And see, what's going on is we have new leadership. It's just not democratic, because there is a fundamental characteristic about humanity. It is humanity, and it doesn't approve of castration of children and neutering them like they're pet animals. It doesn't approve of boys putting on sports bras and panties and using the girls' bathrooms and competing in girls' sports. It doesn't include setting up a new theology it's trying to cram down the American throat when they don't want it. It doesn't incur a massive propaganda campaign to disenfranchise a free press. It doesn't include wiping out the Second Amendment because somebody's scared to do what's necessary to be a productive man or woman and deal with those issues. It doesn't include destroying somebody's incentive to get wealth so you can give it away to somebody that's sitting on their ass doing nothing. It doesn't include opening borders when any fool can see that the United States has international enemies that are extremely dangerous. It doesn't include ideas about cheating openly on elections and then trying to persuade us of a lie that everything's all right when you listen to the manipulated press. See, all of these things are not things that make humanity or the American citizen very happy, but the Democrats are trying to say we ought to be, and they're not saying our leadership is just screwed up beyond belief. FUBAR, fucked up all beyond, relief. That is what FUBAR stands for. Fucked up beyond relief, which is the harsh term, but it's used in the military a lot as a saying. And they want to say all of the leadership is bad, specifically referencing Donald Trump, who is trying to administer the laxative and the enema. And it doesn't go over well. And when you look at what New York has done and them arguing that this needs to be taken to the whole country, people are saying, my goodness, what in the devil are we up to? What has gone wrong? We've lost our minds.
So Trump posted this: the communists are finally making their move, which is true. I've been waiting and preparing for this for a long time. It's easy to be a communist. All you have to do is say, I'll give you everything, but that means you're taking it away from others that have earned it, over thousands of years. That ideology has not worked once. The game is on. Enjoy watching President Donald J. Trump. Yes, the sheets are coming off the sheets from the Democratic Party. They're taking the sheets off, and they're telling you we are now the Democratic Socialist Party. That's the new movement. They are telling they're socialists, right? Socialism, but socialism is just a nicer word than communist. And for decades, even prior to JFK, I can't stand J. Edgar Hoover. He was a horrible person. But the beginning of the 20th century, the United States were steadfast against anyone being a communist. So again, now it seems like it's starting to reemerge where people are feeling comfortable saying, I'm a communist, I'm a socialist. And sometimes communist socialists can go hand in hand. But I want to play this clip here because Donald Trump also posted this on Truth Social. JFK talking about the dangers of communism.
Communism is so often described as an ideology or a belief that exists somewhere other than in the United States. Let me ask you, sir, just how serious a threat to our national security are these communist subversive activities in the United States today?
Well, I think they're serious. I think it's a matter that we should continue to give great care and attention to. We should support the laws which the United States has passed in order to protect us from those who would destroy us from within. We should sustain the Department of Justice in its efforts and the FBI, and we should be continually alert. I think if the United States is maintaining a strong society here in the United States, I think that we can meet any internal threat. The major threat is external and will continue.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. It conducts the Cold War, in short, with a wartime discipline no democracy would ever hope or wish to match. Nevertheless, every democracy recognizes the necessary restraints of national security. And the question remains whether those restraints need to be more strictly observed if we are to oppose this kind of attack as well as outright invasion.
Personal opinion, I think communism is not, particularly now that it's been diffused, and never was as dangerous as fascism, which is extremely seductive because it's socialism. It's basically leftist socialism with some ideology that is extremely poisonous, and it lends itself to targeting a group for particular hatred. And in this case, what it is the targeted group is half of humanity, i.e. masculinity, and that becomes its target. And you have National Socialism of America, aka the Democratic Party, but you had National Socialism of Germany, aka the Nazi Party. And if ever there was a filthy, foul movement that is disgraced the planet, it is Nazism and fascism. And that's what you have right now. And it's insidious because it can try to shift the blame to communism. But if people focus on communism in today's world, they'll miss the point, because it's National Socialism that is really the danger. It is the process that National Socialism perfected 100 years ago of attacking a group and making that group a villain. And you can hear it every time you hear toxic masculinity. Every time you hear somebody who is about appropriate morality, ethics, public law and order, you hear an opposition that says we should have disorder, we should have lawlessness, we should have a breakdown of morality and ethics. Yet we should have a protected group that gets treated as though they're a super race. Look at what you get about the advancement of the rainbow, where everything is slanted around to the rainbow. Look at how they take a hold of the school child and they try to make that child a rainbow acolyte in a few years, a few semesters. And you can see the Socialist Party thing working. You can see it wide open in New York with Mamdani, who is a threat to national security, worse than any communist ever was, because he's doing it in the open. They're doing it in the open. They're advocating not a reformation of the American system, but a destruction of the American system. They're advocating a destruction of a way of life, which is the way of life for normal humans to operate on. They want to get rid of the sexual dichotomies. They want to get rid of those things that are sexual attractions. They want to get rid of boys and girls 101 A and B. They want to get rid of fundamental fairness. They want to get rid of people's abilities to operate in an independent fashion. They are basically advocating the disruption and disintegration of the moral fabric of a healthy society, whether you're talking about the United States of America in the 21st century, or you're talking about Rome in the first century CE. So it doesn't make any difference. You're talking about the destruction of normalcy. And that's where the problem is. That is the target. Just like the Nazis and the fascists had Jews to target, they have straight people to target. Just like they started talking about the communists as a target, they already have a built-in thing, a phobia of communism that was based on 40 some years of Cold War. But it's distressing to see people get distracted from the fact that there is a slow but steady evaporation of free speech, the right to protect yourself, the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure, the right to remain silent and be subject to due process of law as it applies to a citizen. See, these people, these fascists, are all up in arms about breaking down borders and applying due process to people who aren't even supposed to be here in the first place. But in the meanwhile, in order to enforce that, they want to break down due process when it comes to people who are
Communism is
lawfully and legitimately here. It's bad. Now,
Yeah.
pontificated.
So I'm gonna put a pin in that for right now, because like I said, I'm gonna keep doing content on socialism, and this Democrat socialist movement that is happening. We got to talk about it, and we got to talk about the dangers of it. Now, listen, capitalism, it's not all good either. This is a first of all, this is a republic, but
Yeah, they keep talking about democracy. Never was intended to be a democracy. The only thing that is democratic about it is the selection of those people who are in the House of Representatives, the board of electors for the Electoral College, and the people who are now in the United States Senate. And that's only a relatively new thing for half the existence of the republic.
right. So, all right. I kind of just want to swing into a little bit of pop culture. I wanted to talk about the Iranian soccer team. They didn't make it into the round of 32. I wish they did. They did really good. It was just a lot of politics behind that. But I'm gonna say that for later in the week, because I did not like the way they were treated, how the Americans treated them. I understand security reasons, but listen, if we are investing in our military and our spies or CIA and all this other stuff, they should not have been treated the way they were
They
treated.
really shouldn't have, and that's a disgrace.
So you are familiar with that. Do you want
Yeah,
to
I
talk
am
about it a
very
little bit
familiar
now,
with
or
that.
should we do you
I
want to talk about
kept
it now
up
or
with it.
Thursday? You want to talk about it on Thursday or now?
We can just vary a little, but right now, see, one of the aspects of the current dust up over in the Middle East is there are 30,000 Iranians that got put to death in the last 12-month period because they protested. The Iranians have been regularly hanging people who dared to criticize the government. So, with that kind of bankrupt effort to try and impose through terror a condition of obedience and compliance, it's running afoul of the fact that people are getting fed up with that. And part of the reason we didn't operate an all-out bombing campaign on Iran is to maintain a friendly rapport with the general public of Iran, who would like help in overthrowing what they look at as a totalitarian, fanatically religious government, which they don't want. This is a country that in all of the Middle East was in the forefront of westernization in the 1970s, and it suffered a fanatical religious uprising, which was well organized, driven by fanaticism. And now you've got a lot of people that do not like the repression that they're facing. So why alienate them when they, by the way, when that pilot or that backseat operator got lost for a little while in Iran, there was a lot of local cooperation to help out. So you don't want to lose that goodwill.
Right, right.
So you don't bomb them flat like they could. They didn't bring over, once they got absolute air superiority, they didn't bring over the trucks, the B-52s, and carpet bomb some city and just send it to oblivion.
Right.
They say, we're giving you a chance, and part of that chance is we're acting civilized about it, but we've sent the message, so the local population is getting unruly. And that was a very bad move, a very stupid thing that was generated by the Democratic Party and its hold on news media that sent that message out of mistreat these people, and we're supposed to be trying to positively influence them into starting another revolution.
So, like I said, I want to revisit that on Thursday when we record. I just want to bring this up real quick. This is it could be 10 minutes on a little bit of pop culture, because I mentioned to you last week the comments that Oprah made about Whitney Houston, and I want to play that clip. I want to play the clip of what she said, because I think it was very inappropriate for her to say that.
We did the whole, hey girl, how you doing, greeting thing. And then I stopped the cameras and I went behind stage and I said, so tell me, what do you want? What do you want to happen here? And I'm going to tell you what I want to happen here. And that was one of the most powerful interviews. And do you all know, this is an amazing thing that happened. I had such trust from the Oprah show audience that Whitney did, I think it was her last show with us, and she had gone back on drugs. The first interview I did with her when we'd gone behind stage and I asked her about her intention, she was clean. But the day she came to my show then to perform in front of the audience, she was not. And she fell off of the stage. And I knew that if that story got out that she'd fallen off of the stage, that everybody would be, that she would be destroyed by that. And so even though the audience was there and the audience had cameras, I begged them not to put those pictures out because it would ruin her life, and they did not.
And what about...
That would not happen today, I can tell you.
Yeah. What about... we would...
So she's
What
full
is
of
the
shit.
purpose for that?
Yeah, she's full of shit because Whitney Houston estate and her former bodyguard came out and said that yes, she had, she's an addict. She's been an addict. But during that time, that was before the infamous night that she died in a Hilton Hotel taking drugs. She had a relapse. But before that, doing an open show, they said she was clean. She tripped off the stage because it was so dark and she wasn't familiar with the stage. So just an honest mistake. And here go Oprah falling on stage. So can we say Oprah is high?
Maybe, but anyway, you don't know. But here's the thing. See, look, Oprah is a mean-spirited person by a lot of metrics. And you have to take this into context with what she did to Lance Armstrong. Here's a man who was told you have less than 6 weeks to live because you have metastasized cancer and it's really advanced. Well, he beat all the odds and won 7 Tour de France championships, became the best racing bicyclist in the world. And she got his confidence and got him to rely upon her good graces. And then she exposed him for using drugs. Now, you are an active cancer patient. You're going to be taking drugs. Within the bicycling industry, the racing industry, there are drugs, but it does not get away from the hard work. I used to live in Ojai, California, and there was a hill going from lower to upper Ojai. And I used to drive up it regularly, going from where the shopping areas were up to where I had a ranch. And the American Postal team would rehearse. Lance Armstrong would be out there on his bike, and they're going up a hill, and they're in the big gear ring on the racing bikes. And I would pass them, and they'd say, "Judge, how fast are we going?" I said, "My speedometer says you're doing 27 miles an hour uphill, and you're not in the low gear." Impressive. And Armstrong would be humping away, and they'd coast back down the hill and then go back up, and then coast down and go back up. So they're working hours a day to get in shape for this. And she got this man's confidence and persuaded him to out himself for using drugs, which weren't necessarily prohibited. And she ruined this man's career after he heroically and steadfastly fought cancer for so long. And she just ruthlessly turned it into an expose to build up her ratings. I feel partially responsible because she, Dr. Phil, Judge Judy, and I were all in the same CBS syndicated unit. And the week preceding that, she had been told to boost her ratings because myself, Judge Judy, were just stomping all over the ratings when it came to her. And Phil had actually caught up with her in the ratings, so they told her to do better. So she plotted that out, and she just threw this man to the wolves for personal reasons. Now, if she had some reason for bringing this back out that was a lesson to her audience, I could understand it, but it's not. And I can't see any reason for it. But there you go. She's falling down herself. Gets to be up there in the age bit. So,
right.
Roger King would never have allowed that. But Roger King had died just a little while before she did that Lance Armstrong expose. And he was the one that discovered her, managed her, handled her finances, set her book club up, and determined who was going to be a guest on the show. So he left suddenly when he was 69.
And you know what? When she said that, she didn't want it to get out because the papers would have went crazy and destroyed her. And she's right. If it would have got out that she tripped, the papers would have said drugs, even though it was not. So Oprah is basically doing now what the newspapers would have did then if it got out that she tripped off stage. You tripped. It's normal to trip, especially if you're an artist, you're not familiar with the stage and it's dark or whatever, and you're older. Whitney was almost 60. So again, she wasn't high. She just
Well, the point is whether or not she was. Why are you bringing it up now?
Why are you
What
bringing it
is
up? But the fact is that and then we're supposed to believe you that she was. We don't
Yeah,
know.
but the point was, let's assume
There
she
are a
was
lot.
high.
Let's say this.
Let's assume she was.
Mhm.
What is Oprah's purpose for bringing it out now other than gratuitously to boost ratings? There is no message at this late remove. The woman's been dead for more than a decade. So what is your point? Is this saying, look what can happen to you if you do drugs? No, it's not. Is this a point of we have the tragic destruction of a career? No, it's not. It is probably to boost ratings right now because she's not as popular as she once was.
That is true too. But I just want to say this, there are a lot of recovering addicts who are clean, but anything that they do that seems abnormal from the public, they're always going to say, oh, they're probably high or they probably fell off the wagon. So, and that's another reason. That's one of my reasons. The problem I have with Oprah, first of all, like you said, I agree with you. Why are you coming out saying it now and you're using her, for attention and ratings? And then at the same time, we should not believe you that she was high. How do you know she was high? Oh, because you did crack before, because she admitted doing crack in college. So what? You know what a crack addict looked like because you did it.
Who,
So
Oprah?
yeah.
Well, let me put it this way. She graduated from Tennessee State in 1970.
Every time we get to the good part. Every time. Oh, she was 48. I thought she was almost 60. Excuse me.
Hold on.
What happened?
I don't know.
I can hear you, but I can't see you. You probably got to go out.
Okay, well, let me see if I can get back on. I don't know what happened then. Let me put it to you this way. Oprah
But she was
saying,
40. Yeah, she was 48.
okay, Oprah saying she used crack. When?
I don't know. I think she was in
She
college.
graduated from
Oprah said
college.
she used crack.
She graduated from Tennessee State in 1973. How do I know? Because she worked as a gopher for a girlfriend of mine who was named Nettie Stowers. She and I were dating. Nettie had a talk TV program on WSM in Nashville. So Oprah was her gopher. And she graduated from college. They did not do crack in 1973. They freebased, but they didn't do crack in 1973.
Well, she
All
said,
right.
Oprah said, it says Oprah publicly admitted to using crack cocaine and freebasing during a taping of one of her shows in 1995. The episode.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I can buy that.
No, let me finish. The episode focused on substance abuse, and she made the spontaneous confession after a guest shared the story about her addiction. Oprah tearfully told guests and said to the audience, I did your drug. She later clarified that her drug use occurred in her early 20s at the behest of a man she was involved with at the time, and that she stopped using when their relationship ended. So she
What man?
I don't know.
Come on. Miss Bad. Yeah. I won't even go there.
One more thing before we get out of here. One more thing else. One more thing. Wait.
Come on now.
So let me actually bring this back a little bit. Let me share this. So this is Jake Lang, right? He's a troll, grifter, whatever. So he always does these protests. So he called himself protesting at the BET Awards yesterday, and the black people started kicking on his ass and say, "Get up out of here with that." So he was outside the BET Awards protesting. You know, he was holding up signs, anti-black protests outside BET Awards, and the organizers and patrons chased him down. And he was holding up signs about, you know, black culture is disgusting, something about Black parenthood or whatever. So I'm like, what was the purpose of him even being there protesting?
Well, you know what he's doing? He's getting PR for whatever his cause might happen to be. But I mentioned this to you, I think, a few days ago. Some of the victimhood propaganda that we're getting is actually producing results, but not what is sought. They're actually reviving old time racism because a lot of people are getting angry. You saw that thing where the guy was saying he bought alcohol and reefer with the money he was getting for public
Yeah,
assistance.
but he
And
could have been
yeah,
trolling.
but you see, no. But irrespective of it, by publishing that kind of thing, you get people very angry. I don't work hard, so some clown can freeload off of me and do what I couldn't afford to do if I were disposed to do it. So you start getting people to accept all of the negatives that are being said about black people by themselves, not the obvious, but every time you say you're a victim, you're basically saying you're helpless and you got picked on. Every time you want to say I got picked on and start saying you need to give me something because you picked on me, what you're doing is supporting a very negative stereotype. In other words, if you had anybody who was a bully, they'd be certain to jump on that type of person. And even if you didn't have a bully and you just had people who were part of the general crowd of students in a classroom, they would dump on somebody who had that attitude. So what's happening is this victimhood is actually reestablishing a cause that might lead to real victimhood. In other words,
Real
you're promoting
victimhood.
this kind of thing right here.
So BET Awards, you know, which is owned by Larry Ellison's family, you know, it used to be black owned, but it's not anymore. It's stopped being black owned. But I wanted to also, you know, Clive Davis, he died, was in his 90s. He's getting, you know, a lot of people don't like him. I would say he's a very nasty man, the way he exploited Whitney Houston. But
But one thing while we're looking at this, notice the aggressiveness when there's a whole bunch around. But then with that Anthony thing, where they said it's okay when it's 1-on-1 or 1-on-2 to run, not run, to stab and kill because you don't have the balls to face it down. But when it's a whole bunch of you on one person, it's okay.
well, I
In
guess
other words, the cowards in the mob can do what cowards in a mob do because they don't have the nerve to do it to the person face up.
true, but it's just like, why are you even there? So, you know, for
I
what?
know he doesn't have to be there. He's agitating, but I
Yeah,
mean,
he's an
he's
agitator.
making his point.
But what is his point exactly? Because
Get a GoFundMe to deal with supporting white power or something, maybe. I don't know.
right. And so, I mean, I think black people need to stop feeding into that.
You notice he's got on a heavy armored vest, don't you? Kevlar,
He always
armored
wear that.
vest.
Ain't nobody trying to shoot him. And that's what I'm saying.
I know, but he's taking precautions
There are
just
too
in
many
case.
people that are grifting, and they just want the attention. He's not big like that. He's not a Charlie Kirk. Nobody doesn't care about, and that's why I'm surprised people are even attacking
But
him.
look at all of the white people out there attacking him, and why are they at the BET
Because they're
thing?
the
And why
socialists.
why are they upset? See, there you go. That whole thing, the insidious nature. See, the socialist picks up popular causes, unlike the communists who say this needs to be tamped down. So the socialist has a more
But
appealing
you also know,
feel.
I think one of the other reasons why he did what he did, because you have black people that call themselves black conservatives. One of their main sound bites is black people don't have a culture, or our culture is trash, all the negatives to make whatever point they're trying to make. So then that gives white people such as a Jake Lang, thinking he has the green light to regurgitate those sound bites, talking points. And it's like, okay, even these so-called black conservatives that are echoing black culture is trash or whatever, that's all they say. They don't never come with any type of data or research, because if you actually did, you can't give a soundbite of black people culture is trash. And I would never accept that. Now, there are negative aspects to all cultures, but to always say, well, we need, our culture is trash because of this music or that, you saying it's trash because you're just focusing on all the negatives. But again, they never come with any type of data and research. And it does give people like a Jake Lane, the green light to do this silly mess, so to troll, basically. I'm just saying he's just a trolling protester.
By the way, I lost almost 2 minutes of what you were doing. I couldn't hear it.
I would say, what was the last
I
thing
got that yellow band that says "Oops,
what
connection."
was the last thing you heard me say?
You said something about the protesters who
Oh,
are.
okay. What I was saying is, the reason why white people such as Jake Lang is comfortable doing these protests like he did at the BET, this anti-black or black culture is trash, because you have a lot of these black conservatives running around here issuing sound bites as their content, saying black culture is trash, or we don't have a culture or whatever, because they're just picking the negatives and harping on that, but they never come with any data, with any real research, with nothing, just these sound bites. Because when you see something happening in Chicago on a holiday weekend, or you don't like the new hip-hop music or whatever, and these are not just older people, these are young black conservatives saying it's trash, and it gives a person like this Jake Lane, thinking he has the green light to pull up a sign, black parents are horrible and black culture is disgusting, so you're giving them a green light to troll. But a lot of these black conservatives are trolling themselves.
Well, it's America. You have free speech.
Yes, you do. Yes.
But I'm looking at this. I'm counting about twice. I'm counting 2/3 of the group out there is white, with about a third being black. So I find more of the aggressiveness toward him is from white people than it is from black people.
True.
It is an interesting
dynamic
to look at.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a cartoon. A white feminist, has got her hands over this black woman's mouth saying, "Quiet, I'll speak for you," when somebody's trying to talk against it. So one of the problems is that when you hear from some of the woke folk, what they say is a parroting of what you hear the liberal white side say and the feminists. So I'm saying, I don't know, since they're talking black, 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 do they realize that what they're saying is white, white, white?
I guess.
Maybe they don't. I think they don't. They say things that are white in origin, and they don't realize that that's the origin of their sayings, and they keep repeating them like they're anti-white, but they keep repeating things that white people have said, and it's interesting, tragic, really.
Well,
But
that's
then
it.
again, you are probably, your main selling point is that you are a victim and everybody picks on you. So if you claim to be a powerless victim that deserves to be taken care of because you've suffered so badly, why then do you think you are the one group on the planet Earth that's supposed to be immune from commentary?
Nobody's immune, but yeah.
I know, but why? What gives you that status since you are so powerless?
Right.
It doesn't make good sense. I
Well,
mean, you know, when I was growing up, if somebody was bigger than everybody else in the class and stronger and more athletic, you kind of skated around, you know, things around him. You made sure he was your friend. Or if you wanted to dispute with him, you kept it intellectual and you stayed on good terms with him just because he was the most powerful force around.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's not necessarily the case anymore.
All right, that's it. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and of course, thank you, Judge Joe Brown. Great show. Everybody have a wonderful week, and look out for see if the SCOTUS is going to drop that decision on birthright citizenship tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's going to be something that people aren't necessarily expecting.
Well, we'll discuss it tomorrow because
I mean, I kind of have a bet with myself. By the way,
I'm
I'm
still
going to send you
recording. I need to
something.
end the show. Can
No,
I?
you can end it because I got something
Okay.
else for
Can
you.
I say? Let me say goodbye.
Oh, I thought you'd done it.
Can you say goodbye too to people? Say bye.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's been good. Let's see what happens in the future. Hang in there. Maybe it'll be interesting.